Good evening, everyone, and welcome to In the Know with CaT Bobino. Today, my extra special guest is Dr. LaTonya Kilpatrick-Liverman. I had to look. And she is the worldwide director of research and innovation of oral care and global devices. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And so, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, that is a very long title. What exactly does that mean?
So I should say that I work for Colgate Palmolive Company. And as you all probably know, it's a consumer products company. Hopefully you use our toothpaste and oral care products and some of our personal care, and we sell um, pet food via Hills. So
Hmm.
that title means that I lead a team of scientists and researchers in our very basic research department, and we develop technologies for oral care applications. So we spend a lot of time trying to understand how our technologies function, how they help people improve on their oral care through the mode of action, and we develop methods so that we can screen technologies to improve their functionality. So, research and innovation is all about doing the research to understand, but a product is not valuable unless people value using it. It delivers something that's of value to someone else, and that's where the
Right.
innovation comes in, delivering the value. Yeah.
Well, as someone who does use Colgate, with the innovation, is it changing, let's say, what the toothpaste is aiming for? I know a lot of it is plaque and cleaning our teeth, but is the innovation part like we want to continue to eat away at the bacteria or whatever the case may be?
So we listen a lot to what consumers tell us, right? So innovation comes in a number of different ways. It comes in the form of communicating why you should use the product. What attributes is it providing you? It comes in the flavor that people use. I think, but what we do is all about, to your point, performance. And so
Hmm.
we try to make it easier for people to remove that plaque on their teeth. We try to make it so once you remove it, that the biofilm that comes back is a healthy biofilm versus a pathogenic biofilm. We try to make it easier for you to clean all your surfaces so that, some of the reasons why people might get a cavity, not only is it because you're eating the sugars, it's because maybe you're not effectively moving the plaque. And we try to make those ingredients um, that help drive the benefit reside in your mouth for a longer period of time. And we also educate. So the research part is trying to help the consumer understand why it's important to
Mm.
maintain adequate oral care, good oral care. A lot of people do not appreciate how connected having a good oral health is to overall systemic health. And I'll
Hmm.
just, I can't not relate it to this COVID outbreak and how people that had bad oral health really were more susceptible to the negative attributes of COVID than people that had a healthier mouth. So we are now really trying to understand and educate consumers on the importance of oral health.
Wow. Okay. I got so much out of what you just said. And I think one of the biggest things is, or not one of the biggest things, COVID is definitely big, but I want to start with oral health, because when we think about brushing our teeth, there are some people who is like, that's just what I'm going to do. But they forget the tongue and other attributes of actual oral care. So, if you can, what do you feel like? What do you feel like is the main things that we should be looking for when it's oral care?
Yeah. So we often, to your point, only think about brushing, right? And we only think about brushing your teeth, but your teeth are important. They're what we call the non-shedding part of the mouth. So that's why plaque and biofilm kind of stay on there, because your soft tissue does turn over like your skin. You slough it off just like you slough your skin off. but it's important to clean your whole mouth.
Mhm.
So when we talk about our whole mouth, we talk about the outer surfaces of our teeth, the inner surfaces of our teeth. We brush the tongue for malodor. A lot of people kind of know that. Some people actually gargle to kind of
Mhm.
make sure the throat area stays clean. And,
Mhm.
and, and rinsing does help, and flossing, which 20 or 30% of Americans only do, is critical because food and plaque gets stuck in between your teeth, and your all your surfaces are not effectively cleaned unless you floss. So I'll just go one step further that when you leave the plaque on your teeth because you're not adequately removing it, you start a whole inflammatory process. The bacteria start feeding off of the things from your saliva,
Mhm.
from your from your what we call gingival clavicular fluid, and it starts releasing toxins. And those toxins that it releases start an inflammatory process. And so when we recall our grandparents, and maybe for some our parents, they have lost some of their teeth. You do
Mhm.
not have to lose your teeth. Your teeth can be with you for life. And a lot of the reasons why they some of the reasons why they've lost their teeth is something called periodontal disease, where you
Mhm.
actually start destroying your bone structure, your teeth get loosened, and your tooth just kind of falls out. And it's that path that you become more susceptible to some of those inflammatory overall health kind of conditions that I was talking about. Yeah.
Yes, and I just want to put this reminder out. There's going to be people listening to this as a podcast later on, but currently we are live on Facebook and YouTube, so you can put comments and questions in the chat. Right now, we got a couple from Renee who started off with interesting, but when you were talking about COVID and people with not so great oral care, there's a bunch of yuck mouths running around basically. But she does have a question: is how does gut health play into bacteria of the mouth?
Okay, so we know there's a crosstalk between the gut microbiome and the oral microbiome, the gut microbiome and the blood brain barrier. Um, I can't talk um, directly to how what's going on in the gut affects what goes on in the mouth, but what I can say is that there's a cycle called the nitrate reducing cycle that depends
Mhm.
on the microbiome on your tongue and how that microbiome digests or metabolizes nitrates into nitrites that affect your blood pressure. And I know through swallowing, and there is that kind of connection between the gut and the, but I'm not as well versed in that, Renee. So sorry.
No, it's okay. I think one of the things Renee might be referring to is, talking about yuck mouths earlier, people who don't have that great of oral care,
For
you know.
malodor,
Yeah. And then you have
the stomach.
you have
Yeah,
that, but then also what you're eating, if you have bad oral care, that bacteria that's growing in your mouth and things like that is being ingested
swallowed. Yeah,
as well.
it is. Um, it's interesting because they are finding that these microbes that are resident are known to be in the mouth, that they are found in other parts of the body, except the route that they are taking, very few people are suggesting it's through the swallowing route. A lot of times they're suggesting it's through translocation through um, that gingival clavicular fluid, through the gingival tissues, through epithelial breakdown of the gingival tissue, so it gets in that pathway, then it goes into the blood that way to get to different parts of the body. So it's less through swallowing, and it's more through some um, degradation of the gingival tissue, um, which has been one mode of action for how that bacteria gets transported. Yeah.
Right. So to break that down, you think of the tissues in your mouth, think of gingivitis, but basically that tissue in your mouth is thin. So then there's bacteria and things that cross that membrane
Mm.
And we have stuff in our mouths or things we're eating or bacteria that's growing that's crossing that membrane and getting into the blood system.
Yeah.
So instead of you swallowing it, it's actually going through your blood and going throughout your whole body and not just your gut.
Yeah, because and I just want to emphasize that bacteria is not bad. Like,
Hmm.
you don't want to have a 100% clean mouth. It's making sure you have a healthy, balanced amount of bacteria. And the reason why I say you don't want to have a 100% clean mouth is because the bacteria takes up geographical space in your mouth. And if you didn't have the bacteria, you also have viruses in your mouth, you have
Hmm.
fungi in your mouth, you have all kinds of microorganisms in your mouth, and you're trying to keep them all in balance. And it's when it gets out of balance that you have all these kind of the negative impact of what happens. So the key is brush twice a day, floss, just so that you're removing the bacteria so that you don't get a mature bacteria, which tends to be out of balance. Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like we have a symbiotic relationship with
Yeah.
certain bacterias and viruses that have been with us down to
Yeah.
our mitochondrial DNA,
Yeah.
basically. It's been there since whatever you want to believe. Either we miraculously came on this earth or we grew from another creature. Whatever you believe, we've had that symbiotic relationship that amount of time. So we want to make sure we keep a good relationship with what's in our bodies, because either if you go too far left or too far right, you're going to mess up. You're going to have a problem. Too
Yeah.
clean and too
Yeah.
dirty, you're going to have
Yeah.
a problem.
One thing though, I do want to go back to the swallowing, because the one thing that does happen through, I would say, through that swallowing process is all the respiratory viruses, all
Mm.
the pneumonias of the world. That is the path for how that happens. It all starts in the mouth. So if you have to go to the hospital and you have surgery, you are you are more susceptible to this hospital acquired pneumonia if you
Mm.
don't maintain a clean oral health, because they have, and then definitely if you've had something to go down your throat, either to help you breathe or for whatever reason, you are pushing the bacteria from your mouth down into those passages. So that is a
Mm.
route for disease, for those lung and respiratory diseases. Yeah.
So that brings me back to what you had mentioned earlier, which was the COVID, and people who don't have the best oral care. Are you saying the people who didn't have the best oral care are the ones who maybe we're
Yeah.
the ones who see in the hospital because they've gotten that real negative side
Yeah.
effect?
So what they correlated is those people with periodontal disease. So those
Mhm.
people that had inflamed gums and their inflammation was so bad, their bone tissue was becoming degraded. So that means you basically have periodontal disease and you can't reverse the condition. You have a certain level of pocket death. They found the people that had periodontal disease were more likely to die when the initial COVID, that initial variant came out, than
Mhm.
people that did not have periodontal disease. So when I say bad oral health, it was down to you had periodontal disease. And they weren't sure if that was because COVID is also an inflammatory kind. The virus sparked a cytokine storm, a very inflammatory pathway. And that's what happens for periodontal disease too. You have an inflammation pathway that's being initiated. And so they're not sure why, but there was definitely a strong correlation there.
Hmm. Tavari said that's great information, and it is because, yeah, I don't think people realized the importance of wearing a mask and trying not to catch it, as well as brushing your teeth and keeping your mouth
Mm-hmm,
clean.
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
oops, it was a definitely a virus that we were seeing that was a respiratory virus. So we're catching it,
mm-hmm. Because all
coughing,
the
breathing.
receptors are like in your mouth and your nose. Those ACE2 receptors. That's where, well, they're everywhere, but
Right.
your mouth and
Well,
nose. That's
it's a direct pathway into the body.
mm-hmm,
I don't think a lot of
mm-hmm,
people think about that, but eyes,
mm-hmm,
mouth, ears, nose, and throat, not ears,
mm-hmm.
Nose, throat,
Eyes, nose.
eyes have such a just a straight path into the body, the
Mhm.
human body. Um,
I'm going to do my other public health message. Say
okay.
those that have those that are diabetic, those that have cardiovascular disease,
Hmm.
definitely those that are diabetic. It's much harder to treat your diabetes if you have periodontal disease, and it's much harder to treat
Hmm.
your periodontal disease if you have diabetes. So
Ooh.
yeah. So if you are diabetic, you need to pay even more attention to maintaining good oral health, because there's a now known link between the two.
Wow. Okay. This is all new to me. This is amazing. I did not know that, and definitely in our culture we have a problem with diabetes and high blood pressure.
Mhm,
And I don't know if African Americans have a high degree of periodontal disease, but I definitely know diabetes.
mhm,
And it all starts kind of with what we eat and what we
mhm,
are putting into our bodies. And I mean, I
mhm,
could go on about that, going all the way to
mhm,
slavery, and we're given the
mhm,
junk, and our
mhm,
bodies have developed a way of keeping salt in because of all the salt
mhm,
that they had to eat.
mhm,
But we
mhm,
have to get back to eating a more natural, better for us diet. It's very difficult though in America. I feel like
mhm,
America, or I not even feel, I know America has a horrible diet.
mhm,
Horrible.
mhm, mhm. And we have a lot of food deserts where we're not
Mm,
even getting access to those foods that would be healthy for us. I think our parents, I remember my grandmother, because my grandfather was a farmer. So my, my parents, my dad grew up on a farm. But I remember my grandmother, so always we had a green. So
mhm.
always we had collard greens, turnip greens, some kind of green she had on that dinner table, right? But for her, you know, she cooked greens in water, like lots of water, and they boiled all day. And it's like
Yeah,
now we know she boiled all the
nutrients out
nutrients
of
out of those greens.
it.
However, they were smart. She drank that liquor, so it's like I dumped it down the drain, but they knew that there was nutrients in there, and she drank the. So I think unbeknownst, there was a lot of, even earlier, from our grandparents. They ate much better. Fast food
Mhm.
came along, and there
Yep.
are like no nutrients in fast food. So we were in a better spot than now we are. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's my mom, she calls it the pot liquor.
Yeah, the pot liquor. Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely, she'd be like, "Oh, I'm feeling well. Cook some greens, some kales or something, and drink that pot liquor."
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm like, it's nasty. I get the point. I get what you're saying, but that is so nasty. It's on the
Mm-hmm. I
level of
totally agree.
castor oil, or it's just gross. And it's just like, okay, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying is true, but it's so difficult. It's so difficult. I'd rather have a kale salad. Let me just
Yeah.
eat the salad version of
Yeah.
this because I don't want the pot liquor.
Yeah. My friend from the Caribbean, she taught me how to do it with less liquid, and she just kind of flavored it with garlic and stuff. So I'm trying to do it her way, although I burn it half the time. So yeah.
Well, after this, I'm gonna need that recipe. One, two. I usually do it with chicken broth instead of water,
Mm,
and then I
mhm,
don't cook it as long.
mhm,
So
mhm,
I'm probably still ripping a lot of nutrients out of it, but
mhm,
I like it that way. I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to
mhm,
eat better, more fruits, more
mhm,
vegetables, less meat.
mhm,
But it's very difficult, especially some of the people you might be around, whether it's family or friends, and they're like, "Let's go get a burger, let's go get
mhm,
pizza, let's go get,"
mhm,
and
mhm.
it's so quick and it's so
It's so
easy to
easy.
do.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we could talk about that, I'm sure, a lot, but I want to get back to you and your work. Because I think it's very important what you said, and having an understanding of periodontal disease and how it is attached to diabetes, and you have to be mindful of that, you know. And I don't think people realize how important oral health is. I mean, I have a hard time getting my 1-year-old to brush his teeth, but I'm like,
Mhm.
you know, you need
Mhm.
to brush your
You
teeth.
have
I
you
need
have to
this.
get in there. Yeah. As
Yeah.
the first when the first tooth erupts, because that's when the everything starts adhering to a surface. That's when you got to get in there. I remember my 2 and 3 year old. So I have 3 girls now, much adults basically. But when they were 2 or 3, I remember battling, like holding them. You got to brush your teeth. Brush your teeth. Because they don't know. I mean, they kids. We want them to know how to brush their teeth when they're 2 or 3 because they so want to do it. I can do it myself.
Yeah.
I do it
Right.
myself.
Right.
And but they can't because it's hard for them to kind of get every surface off. So I'll do my other public service announcement for kids. You know, we as caregivers for kids are it's very we define how their oral microbiome is. We any caregiver, so it's not always the mom, but I'll just call it the caregiver. So they're born with a given a certain diversity of microbes in their mouth, depending on whether they were vaginally birthed or cesarean birth. But it is
Mm.
what it is, right?
Mhm.
Between 0 and 2, it is changing. It is constantly changing. It's constantly adapting because it's a part of the immune function and it's helping the kid kind of battle all these. But by 2, it starts leveling off. And it's like, it still changes, but the exponential change happens like between 0 and 2 and 3. So, so it's very important when they are that young that you keep their mouths clean, and it doesn't matter that they're losing their baby teeth, because when their permanent teeth come in, that microbiome that was on that baby tooth that caused the cavity is going to be on that permanent tooth. That's going to
Hmm.
give them more trouble. So the best thing is to keep them clean, keep them clean. We have a product, and I'm going to put a shout out that, you know, after, I think it's no fluoride. After 2, even at 1, I think it's okay. There's a Tom's of Maine product. It's called Sensitive Relief. It has this ingredient called arginine in it.
Mhm.
Arginine is in your breast milk. Arginine is in your saliva. Arginine is amino acid. But arginine is metabolized by bacteria, and it creates a very basic pH that helps facilitate a healthy microbiome, especially for those that are like candy. And so I'm saying this, the company is not. I'm saying this based on studies that we've done outside the US and that we sell outside the US, that's a good product for kids to help manage, and for moms and caregivers to help manage that microbiome, to have it
That's good to
very.
know because, yes, I have a very active 1.5-year-old who, I will be honest, doesn't get his teeth brushed every night, or because he is running, and we
Mhm,
try to brush it together. I'm like, mommy's brushing
mhm,
her teeth, you
mhm,
brush your teeth, we're gonna brush our
mhm,
teeth together. But
mhm,
he just wants to eat the toothpaste and not really
mhm,
brush his teeth.
mhm, mhm.
So I will take any suggestions or help on how. Do I just have to like corral him, like put him in a chokehold kind of and just get in there
You
and
you
brush his
you
teeth?
can put them in the chokehold and get in there. We also have I think we sell it in the US. I got to get what it's called. We call it Magic. It's a connected
Magic.
toothbrush. Uh, and older kids kind of appreciate it because it's like gamified. So they can look in the mirror, look in the app, and they're in this kind of disguise thing as they're
Oh.
brushing their teeth, and they get kind of points for doing a good job. So I can give you the information about the Magic toothbrush. So some kids, because it's so different, they kind of are more willing to kind of, at least in the beginning, brush better. But yeah, the chokehold works. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've had all three of them were in chokeholds,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
he's
tried what you do. Now let's do it together. You go first, and then I'll go with you, and then up after you're done, let me just see how well you've done. Let me just help whatever. After after doing that a couple of times, they get what's going on, and they become resistant again, and so.
right, right, right. I'd be like, "Can mommy do it?" And, and he runs away,
Yeah,
and I'm just like, "Oh,
yeah,
okay, well."
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I fight, sometimes I give it up.
Yeah,
I'll be
it's
like,
sometimes you just get
you won.
tired, I know. So to your point about innovate, we know this and we're trying to figure out how to help parents do it better because it's so important. And we just I had a colleague, and even though we know this, she was going through the same thing, and her kid is like all his molars had cavities, and I'm like, but you know
Really?
this, and she's like, yeah, it's just hard. I'm like, I know. I
It
know.
is. It's very, very difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
Not all
Yeah.
kids, but some kids.
Yeah.
But is there a mouthwash that they can drink that would clean their teeth?
So there's not a mouthwash that they can drink. And the key, unfortunately, with rinses, because that's what we've heard too. Oh, can I just, and kids will say, oh, can I just get a rinse? And all I
Mm-hmm.
have to do is, rinse and, shake it up and spit. Unfortunately, got to remove that plaque. And the best way to
Mm.
remove the plaque is mechanically. And the rinses don't remove the plaque. So the
Does it
rinses are
loosen it up? Like, is it better to rinse
some
first, then brush, or does it
some
matter?
rinses. That's what people. So there are two schools of thought. Some people say brush and then rinse. Some people say rinse and then brush. But brushing is always there. So
Yeah.
um, are there toothpaste to loosen the plaque? There are toothpaste that make the plaque less adherent, and so you
Mm.
get less plaque on your teeth. So I'll promote our product. If you use our Colgate Total, the Colgate Total products make it so that there's less plaque buildup on the tooth. So why Colgate Total? So it's basically any of the antibacterials. They all in the US, so I can say this, they all in the US have the same active, but we have formulated it the best. Let's self-promote Colgate so that it
You're
works
right.
very, very well. So those, if you use those products, there's less adherence of the bacteria on the tooth, but you still have to brush. You still have to brush.
Okay. And so I'm looking back at your title, which is the global devices. And one of the things you said was, right, the toothbrush that's in other countries. Are there other things that's in other countries that we don't have here in
Yeah, so
America?
it's mainly there are toothbrushes that are in other countries. There are pastes that are in other countries too. So the anti-cavity paste that I talked about, um, it's made with an ingredient that we're now looking at in the US to kind of get it approved. It's more the regulatory processes are different.
Mm,
So certain countries have a shorter path. So certain countries don't consider certain actives as drugs, and so you can get them through kind of
mm,
faster. But so we have that anti-cavity product that's in all of the world, everywhere but the U.S. We have most everything else. We have another kind of antibacterial product that is everywhere but the U.S. Again, that's just because the US has some actives that are accepted here that we don't have to go through as long as a regulatory process. But most everything else is all geared toward regional likes. So
mm,
flavors and form are adapted to regional likes. And there are abrasives in toothpaste. Americans tend not to like calcium carbonate based abrasive systems. They like silica abrasive systems. They like that
mm.
aesthetic. So most of the US has silica abrasive systems just because Americans prefer that. So,
Prefer it. Yeah. No, I
so
get it. We Just last week on the podcast, I had the Beauty Brains, which are two chemists, cosmetic chemists. And so they worked in hair products, makeup, stuff like that. And we were having that same conversation where, like, in different countries, it's different smells that they really like, or different textures that they really like that Americans don't, or vice versa. And you have to go by region to see what they're willing to use and or what they like, basically.
Yeah. Especially flavors. It's unreal that we're a mint country. It's all into mint, right? We don't even think about anything but mint. But in other countries,
Right.
they are so experimental when it comes to flavors. It's interesting. Yeah. Some of the flavors that, like our flavors, when they taste, they have to get their taste buds in the realm of that region,
Right.
because what we might say is, oh, this is awful, but the region just loves it. So
Yeah, that reminds me of this TV show I like on Netflix called Flavorful Origins, and it's all throughout China. It's all these different foods, and like today I was watching it, and it's something I can watch on repeat. But anyway,
hmm
it's like, oh, this soup that they really like to have in the morning has pig's blood and intestines and something like that. And I was like, for breakfast, like first of all, pig blood
hmm
in general, but for breakfast. But yeah, different folks, different flavors
different
for
food.
different folks,
Yep,
I can't
exactly,
be mad at it.
exactly.
The only thing is I will try things. I
hmm
am a trier. As long as it doesn't look like its original form, I
hmm
eat, I'm not really big on fish that still have the head on it or stuff like that, but
hmm
I will try things. Be like, hey,
hmm hmm Yeah,
that
you
seems
never know.
cool.
You never know.
You never know. Because, I don't mind mint, but I don't mind other flavors too. As long as my teeth are clean, that's
Mhm,
all that matters to me.
mhm,
I've even done the baking soda,
mhm,
just like clean
mhm.
it with baking soda and stuff. Yeah, I
It's
tried it.
amazing too because how people will see a color, right? And they equate a color to a flavor. And they get
Mm.
so fooled. I mean, we do this jelly bean game, right? So think of a
Yeah.
yellow jelly bean, you think of lemon, and it just kind of floors you when you taste something totally different than the lemon that you're expecting from that yellow jelly bean. Yeah. So the
Yes,
same
when
with
it's
colors of
popcorn.
tooth. Yep. Yep. Colors of toothpaste do the same thing. People are expecting one thing, and when they see a certain color, yeah.
Huh.
Mouth rinse
So
is the same. They're expecting something. It's interesting.
yeah, I was just thinking about like all the toothpastes I've ever had, and majority of toothpaste is white.
White. hmm
Yeah. So I guess is that supposed to?
There's some blues and some teal
Yeah.
greens, yeah.
And
And
there's
then
some mixes like white
there's
and
some mixes.
teal.
hmm
But
hmm
I don't think I ever paid attention to what flavor it was because
hmm
I automatically knew this is the
Mint.
flavor I'm used to anyway. Like, it's probably mint.
Do you remember there was one brand? Oh my God, I want to call it. It was red and it was cinnamon flavored. I forgot
Hmm.
the name of the brand, but it was
Yes.
very strong cinnamon with red.
Yes. Kind of like
The chewing
Big
gum.
Red Gum, I think.
Yeah, yeah. But there
Yeah.
was close up. I know, and but I close up was red, but I there was another one I think. So anyway.
And I tried it. I tried it, and I think I
Mm,
was like, "This is spicy,"
mhm,
like
mhm,
this cinnamon is kind
mhm.
of it's got a bite to it. So it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't for me either because
Mhm,
it was like
mhm,
spicy. And
mhm.
then like with mouthwash, like I feel like my mom still does the brown one, the brown Listerine,
No,
because she's
the
like,
Listerine. Mhm,
yeah, she's
mhm.
like, it cleans well. And I'm like, I feel like the blue one cleans just as well and doesn't burn like the brown one does.
Yeah, and now so we've gone. Ours is another total. Ours is doesn't burn at all. So it's interesting because people are conditioned to expect the
Mm-hmm.
burn, right? And that's basically the commercial: expect the burn, but you don't need the burn for it to
And
work.
I try
The
to tell my
burn
mom
sometimes
that,
is
but
doing so. Yeah.
yeah, I
Mm.
try to tell my mom that she still buys the brown one, which I'm just like, that's all you. I don't want no parts of it.
Yeah. So she believes that the more the burn, the better the product, right?
Right. And I'm like, no, ma'am, I'm A-okay. I don't want any parts of that
Mm,
whatsoever. But whoo, we've talked a lot about that. I want to talk about
mm,
you. So
mm.
you have your PhD. in chemistry. Can you tell me
Mhm.
about that? Like, was it always your idea to go to college for chemistry, or did you change your mind along the way?
I didn't know anything else. So I was one of these people that in high school, like my favorite teacher. So I had two teachers that I liked. One, people were like, "Why do you?" I still remember the man's name. His name was Mr. I remember both of their names. Mr. Saunders was my math teacher. Mr.
Mm.
McKinney was my chemistry teacher. So Mr. McKinney was one of these teachers that made the class fun, made it easy to learn, was always blowing up stuff, bringing
Yes.
experiments in the classroom to explain the concept and just getting you all excited about chemistry. And Mr. Saunders was almost the opposite. He was very rigid, very short, small man, but you did not come to his class without your homework done, or he would make you go to the board and embarrass you to tell you to do the problem on the board so that he basically knew that you knew what you were doing. So because I think you needed math for chemistry, and Mr.
Mm-hmm.
McKinney made chemistry so fun, um, and my dad major was chemistry. I didn't know anything else, so I was like, okay, I'm going to school, and I'm going to major in chemistry. I never thought I was going to get a PhD in chemistry. My whole thing was, oh, I'll just be a doctor. I'm going to, major in chemistry, and I'm just going to go to med school. I'm going to be pre med.
Right.
And I knew that I wasn't serious about pre med when I got the MCAT application. I didn't even, I read the application and I was like, oh, you want me to do all this? And I said,
Mm-hmm.
it made me start, because one of the questions I think was, why do you want to be a doctor? Do an essay about, what I said, that's time consuming. And I guess I don't really want to be a doctor that bad that I'm filling out the essay.
Right.
Um, so I I talked to my advisor, and he says, "Oh, so if you're not going to go this route, you don't want to just graduate because you'll have a dead end job and you really won't have a career.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you go to grad school?" So so that's what I did. I didn't know anything else, so I was basically advised to go through this whole pathway through from undergrad to grad. And I even picked the grad school because it was a joke. I wasn't really being serious about it. I went to school at Hampton. I wanted to go home. I'm from North Carolina. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to go. I applied to North Carolina State, and I applied to Carolina. I'm like, I'm just going home after school. But as a
Mm-hmm.
joke, I had a very good friend that he went to Princeton as an undergrad. And I'm like, oh, he got in Princeton. Let's just see if I can get in Princeton. So I just applied it. It's like a fluke. And I got in and I said, I don't want to. And then
And
I
everybody
turned
was
them down.
like, "You gotta go."
Yeah, I actually turned them down. And this
Oh.
same professor that told me that I should go to graduate school, his name was Dr. Wood. He was like, you must have knocked your head up against the wall and you just are delirious right now, right? He's like,
Mm-hmm.
what is going, and he explained, he sat me down, he explained the importance of why I should go to Princeton, more in terms of money. You want to work for a professor that after so many years you don't have to teach. He went through the whole thing, the name recognition, everything. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
call. I actually had to call the dean and say, look, you're going to get a rejection from me. Just ignore the rejection. And I accept. So that's how I ended up where I was. I, 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 the group that I worked in at Princeton, very, very family oriented, um, coaching like professor who believed in letting you go. So he wasn't one of these guys that was all over your shoulder, kind of
Mm-hmm.
pushing you along. He very much depended on the people in his lab to 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 be your teacher, but he would be your guide. So he was your guide; they were your teachers, and he let you fail all the time. But he thought that was the learning process. It ended up being, yeah, it ended up truly being the learning process. But that after that, then I met my husband during that stint, and that's how I stayed in New Jersey, and I picked a company that was in New Jersey because he wasn't leaving, and that's where I stayed. So I've been with Colgate for the last 30 years. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's amazing. And it's it's something that I think I talk about quite a bit actually on the podcast, especially when I'm talking to a person of color who has a PhD in science. It's like I went into science and I thought I'd be a doctor because that's kind of what a lot of people think. You know, you go into science, you go to science to be a doctor. We don't even think about research at that point. It's, this is what you need to be in pre-med. So this is the direction you're going to go, or even a
Mm-hmm.
veterinarian, but not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily a researcher. But
Mm-hmm.
then either you get into research or someone pushes you towards research and you're like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is
Mm-hmm.
something else I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it interesting, and I'm going to ask you this. Why do you think that is? Why is research not on the forefront when it comes to science? Like when we say science, a lot of people think being a medical doctor or a veterinarian or something like that, but not researcher.
I think for me, it's who I saw, like the model who was in my community that I could see what they were doing. And there were no researchers. There was
Mm,
no researchers that I was exposed to. So it was a lawyer, a dentist, or a doctor, or you were your businessman, right? You had your own business. You were a barber or a beautician, or, I knew no
mm-hmm.
researchers, right? And
Right.
so I only got exposed to the research in as an undergraduate because I think the government, we had this program called Mark, I think that was called Minority Access to Research Careers. And one of
Whew.
my professors at Hampton, she was in charge of the Mark program. And so I got in there not because I liked research. They paid you.
Right.
They
Right.
paid you. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I can get some of my some extra money each month if I go into this Mark. So I'm kind of cheap. So I said, oh, that's what I have to do. It's easy money. So that's how I got exposed to research, was through this Mark program. And you know they sent you off for a semester, and I ended up at Brookhaven National Lab, which was a true, like, a half a semester of really doing research. I said, oh, this is kind of cool. But I think the other thing, Kat, and I see it now, there are other careers. So in my generation, all I knew was chemistry, right? And everyone was saying, don't do biology. Don't do biology. That's a dead end path. Don't do biology.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? Chemistry hasn't changed. Chemistry has basically stayed the same for the past 30 plus years. It's biology that has really picked up. And the things that people are learning, if you go in the biology area, first of all, if you go into computational biology
Mm.
with all the omics, you will have a job
Right.
everywhere because that's where
Mm-hmm.
everybody's looking. Bioinformaticians, they're like data scientists. If you don't even want to do a, a biology, just want to do math and data science, you can't find enough of them. So, in anyone that's looking for a career right now, stick with computational stuff, computational biology, math, all those areas. That's all the algorithm development, all the predictive bias,
Mm-hmm.
all math, right? And no one's shared this with me because the math part was there when I was growing up. Now I'm looking at hidden figures and I see where the math comes into play, right?
Yes.
But nobody shared.
Exactly.
No, nobody exposes. I think as a kid, especially in our community, we don't see it, and I think that's why. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the reason I do the podcast, is to highlight all these different careers that's out there. And, and you're saying chemistry doesn't change, but I met a young lady who is I know it's in chemistry, but it's marine chemistry. And
Mm-hmm.
she
Mm.
does research on marine water and chemistry and how it's changing and, climate, all that stuff,
For the
which,
sustainability and climate change.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
When I said not changing, I mean, I guess I should say it differently. Like, the tenets of chemistry we understand, like the how we understand how bond formation and breaking and energy, bond energy and all that, we that we still understand. I think what we don't, for the biology part, what we didn't appreciate. So this is, I was sitting with someone at lunch today, and he was doing something called single cell RNA sequencing, and
Mm.
that's like a new area in biology. And I was like, ooh, what does that mean? What are you doing? So so he's I said, break it down. Let me understand what that means. So he says, okay, as a biologist, we used to think of cells as a single cell. Like if you say
Mhm.
my gingival cells, you just think they're gingival cells.
Right.
He says with cancer and all the techniques to understand cancer, we now know that a gingival cell, you might have 10 different types of gingival cells, all doing all different things. And if you look at the epidermal cells all in your mouth, you might have 10 or 20 different cells on your mucosa versus your palate versus your gingiva versus your throat. They're called the same thing, but they're different types of cells doing different things to provide a benefit. And I think the awareness is growing in biology, things that we just still don't understand and still are trying to figure out, that I think is different from chemistry. So I think that's what I'm trying to say. Is that
Oh no.
we're still learning, we're still learning things in biology, and yes, we're still learning things in chemistry, but the amount of what we're learning is much different, I think.
Oh, I get that. I definitely can understand that. Yeah, there's much more application with biology, and the integration of biology and tech has
Mm-hmm.
been
Oh yeah.
really, really big.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I had a my nephew went to Texas Southern,
Mm-hmm.
and I went out there for his graduation. I met a professor, and I had my degree in biology, and he was trying to convince me to come there to get, I think, a master's in math to do
Mm-hmm.
like computational
Mm-hmm.
biology. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, absolutely not.
You'll be in
Like,
the money, Cat. You'll be in the money.
I know, I missed that opportunity. But I mean, I think for me, it was more so I was like, I don't want to sit in front of a computer all the time. You
Yeah.
know, I like to
Yeah.
do things with my hands
Mm-hmm.
and move. Like, I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to always take somebody else's information and always be
Yeah.
on a computer. So,
That's
but
understandable.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is still, now you jump. I think he graduated about 8 years ago, and you jump now, and I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, now I see everybody do it. I guess maybe I could have done it, you know. And then working from home virtually for 2 years, I'm just like, well, I
Mm-hmm.
was in front of a computer anyway, so I guess I
Yeah.
could have done
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just now I think people are figuring out how to go through all this data and make sense of it and predict things, and so it's really it's the new flavor of the month, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay. That is a young person's game. It's fine. Y'all
Mm-hmm.
do that, and I will highlight you and the work you do. That's what I like to do. I
I
I'm
yeah.
not going to do that.
I think for the young people that will see the podcast, I still would say, if you don't know what you want to do, that's fine. Um,
Hmm.
it's still something to explore, but don't not um, because you don't know what you do, don't not stop taking science courses and math courses, because as soon as you stop taking science courses and math courses, you kind of limit yourself to what you can do. You might have to go back and relearn. So if you're still in high school, if you're still in middle school, they might be the tough classes, but there's opportunity there's opportunity in continuing to take them. Yeah.
Yeah, don't I would say don't be afraid to take a science class that you know nothing about,
Exactly.
like
Mm-hmm.
geology. I wish I had taken geology classes, because now as
Mm-hmm.
a grown person and the geologists I've met, and like don't I've done walking tours. I'm like, oh, like I have walked past this a million times and didn't realize this is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, and it's it's amazing because I was just open minded to learn something about geology. It
Mhm,
wasn't even a class; it was just
mhm,
people I met. But
mhm,
yeah, don't be
mhm.
afraid to just take that off-brand class. You
And
never
we're
know.
always learning to what you just said. Nowadays, because of the YouTubes and people doing all these kind of, this is how to understand topic A, B, or C. We're always learning. So learning doesn't stop after school. We're always learning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I am. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah,
You gotta
exactly.
be open minded to learning something new or learning something about someone else. I mean,
Exactly.
I'm always learning, always.
Exactly. Exactly.
But we're getting down to the wire. It's been a great
Mhm.
conversation. So I have two more questions for you. So the first
Mm.
question is, what do you see the next 5 years or so? What do you see for the future? You can say it about chemistry, about yourself, or about Colgate and Palmolive. But like in the next 5 years, what do you see happening?
So I see a lot more digital
Hmm.
access, like digital and buying things differently. So I'll go about how I think life will change. I think COVID has sped up a process where the way we meet and communicate and interact with each other with, has forever changed.
Hmm.
I think it has even more flattened the world, meaning that, we used to travel to have meetings and to make business deals and to go to conferences, whatever. I think there's still value in going to conferences, um, to network, but I
Right.
think the space of you know connecting across borders is forever changed right now because of this virtual and digital access. I think the way we buy things has forever changed because
Hmm.
of this ability to order things online and get them the next day,
The
and
very next
to
day, yes.
order the food at any restaurant now that you basically want and get your food whenever. I mean, when my daughter told me at her school she's doing DoorDash for lunch, I'm like, really? So I mean, it's how to access the cafeteria is just different. How we pay for things. I think currency is kind of going away, and people
Hmm.
are paying with cards and don't really have a lot of free cash, and change, and you know, running out of coins during COVID was just like, really, that the stores don't have the coins. So I
Where are
think
they going?
yeah. So I think we're evolving into a digital, this metaverse kind of space. I think there'll be more of that in 5 years, in predicting. So I think with these algorithms, people are going to do a better be able to better predict how to do medical treatments and how to prevent diseases and how to predict what you like to see for your movies. It's already
Oh
there.
yes.
Your
Oh
home
yeah.
screen.
That's
So
already happening.
data is everywhere. There's going to be more access to data and more ways of using the data. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Mm.
Um, and I lied. I have two more questions. The next question is, if someone saw this, was interested in going down your pathway, the type of pathway that you went down with chemistry, what advice would you give them?
Mm. So I think it's I think it's very important. Let's just say the path of going to graduate school. I think it's very important to pick not only what you want to work on for the next 5 years. I picked something that wasn't industry applicable, and I just got lucky. I got lucky
Mm,
that I got hired by a company that just wanted to hire a chemist, someone that could solve problems. I think it would be good if someone was going down this path that they chose something that they like to do, but they also, if they wanted to go into industry, some people still want to teach, but if they wanted to go into industry, think about life after graduate school and how you would apply what you're learning in graduate school in an industrial context. And some schools are better suited, some schools are better designed, that they're doing
Mhm.
stuff that they know are applied, and some schools are just very basic. And what you're doing would not see the light of day in any kind of industrial format. So just kind of know a little bit about what you want to do and think through how it's going to be applied after you're done.
Okay. Hey, Bobby, I see you. Bobby's a consummate learner too. That's what he's trying to say.
Mm.
But okay, as we close out, if someone wants to learn more about you, how could they learn about you?
I am not so good on on social media, so I don't post a lot. I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm a voyager. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, but I for LinkedIn I really use it to find people, to find skills. I rarely post. I don't know how people can find out more about. That's a very good question. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I found you. I know how to get in touch with her, but don't ask me because she probably
I'm on
doesn't want her
LinkedIn.
information.
I'm on LinkedIn as Kilpatrick if you want to find me. But other than that, there's if you Google me, I don't know what's gonna pop.
Well, the first thing that pops up is your stuff about you at Colgate. So, and they need to
Okay,
change
very
your
good,
title. That's
very
what
good.
they need to.
Okay.
But thank you so much for joining me tonight, for sharing your story, for talking to us about oral care and teaching us more about oral care. I mean, definitely me. I learned a lot tonight.
Mm,
I mean, I appreciate everything that you've said tonight. Thank you.
yeah, and thank you again for inviting me and allowing me to share and um, just being a part of what you're trying to do, because I think what you're trying to do to kind of share and expose people to different assets of science is really powerful. So thank you.
Awesome. And hold on for just a second. I'm just going to say thank you to everyone who joined us tonight, all the questions and comments. I appreciate it. If you didn't get a chance to ask a question tonight, too bad you missed it. Nah, you can always send me a message and I can respond or send it to um, Dr.
Yeah,
Kilpatrick-Liverman. And if she feels like responding, she can.
yeah, I'll
You
respond.
know, but make sure you join me next Wednesday with Dr. Du Bois. And good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for listening.